some old wise stuff from history. So yeah, if we take $1 trillion and put it into the system via loans, right, and then we apply this magical thing called interest, and then at the end of the year, those loans would have to be paid back, the trillion, plus say 5% interest, right? The problem is the 5% interest does not exist in the system, and so the Ponzi scheme is born, and the system is doomed to get faster and faster and faster until it fails. That's what I'm saying. It's a mathematical absolution that
yeah, but
this is
maybe
inevitable.
It doesn't take a limit to infinity. Maybe it just takes a limit for functional utility, and then a new thing gets shifted, and then boom, that old limit changes the formula to it being another limit. Then it changes to another thing, and it always is just this emergent thing that has no rational algorithmic limit, but it still functions.
If you look at history, my friend, it fails every 100 odd years, doesn't it?
And yet here.
So yeah, right now they can't let the stock market fail, because if it does, the banking system collapses, which destroys society. And so each time the stock market crashes, they have to figure out how to put a money printer back on. And yeah, Jerome Powell will somehow come out.
So what's more valuable, society or your stock market?
Well, I'm saying it's all linked. I'm saying that society.
No. What's more valuable? Where do you situate the valuable?
Society.
Society. So that's always going to win. That's always going to win.
They don't
so no
want
matter
it to
how
collapse.
your mathematics works, it doesn't matter how much of a limit leads to its dysfunction. It's mathematically imprecise. It doesn't matter what the model says. What remains the primary thing of value is societal stability. The moment you deviate from that principle, you will destroy your society, and you'll also lose your
mind. Okay, yes, yeah. So, but Anup, we're assuming they can keep this game going forever, and what I'm trying to say is they can't, because they keep pumping the markets now. Every time there's a crash, they've got to do quantitative easing or whatever it's going to be called.
Curve control. Just create a new narrative. I mean, that's what Ponzi operators do. That sounds rational, right?
Yeah, that's what Ponzi operators do.
It's just place the value injection, and you'll get enough right. And there's always so you can justify to the masses that it's logical for us to do this because the value is coming from here, even though there's no actual value coming into this. You got to justify why the stability of society remains more valuable than whatever this thing you're calling the market is, because the market has narrative structures that allow and convince and motivate people to want to delay gratification.
I'm not managing to. I don't think I'm managing to grasp my point. Mathematically, it will collapse. It will just go boom very fast. They keep coming out with ideas, but they're running out of ideas. We're running out of road. We're kicking the can down the road, but it's like putting sticking plasters on a problem after problem after problem. The root problem is applying interest to debt-based money. It's doomed to collapse. That's it. The whole thing's inflated to crazy scales. And you believe they can keep the game going forever. And I personally don't.
What's the alternative game, right? There's no reason why this model needs to exist forever. The question is the alternative model you're providing giving us everything plus more? Or is it just giving us everything without the difficulty of something that's there? And if you do have that model, publish it and let's move on. Like, don't fight over it. You know what I mean? Just publish it. Let's see it.
I don't have a model. I'm just a mere human watching the current central bank system and thinking, where's my money safer in a bank or in Bitcoin? Oh, it's safer in Bitcoin.
How about this? Your money is safe in society. And if your society and your neighborhood and your community is fucked up, then your money's never going to be safe anywhere other than there. It's as simple as that.
Oh, if your community gets fucked up, then yeah, buy rice. Okay? You need rice. You forget goals, forget money. You need food.
Yeah, so make sure your farms are working, they're not polluted, there's not toxins all over the ground, you have good water supply, sustainable farming. That's where your money is secure, intergenerational.
Right back.
Anoop Society Planner. Anoop's the Society Planner. I like it.
Give us a solution business, man. Other than just complaining about it.
Yeah,
Solution?
I did a good pushback against Stav there. Stav is one of the most pro crypto guys on here, and Anoop gave a pretty good pushback of asking what would crypto do at the end of the day. I never quite understood it either, business, but they used to talk about moving to the crypto island. You've heard all of this shit, right? But at the end of the day, Stav just wants to be free of this crooked system, at least free himself by grabbing the gold and saving his own gold. So you can't. It is individualistic, but we've seen it throughout history. It's not the worst move to just grab the gold.
I love how Daniel is saying you become communal when you lack resources. That's called the scarcity mindset theory of sociality. The presumption being that once you have food, sex, and land, you don't need society anymore, which is probably the kind of Californian Valley Girl type mentality he has. The reality of the situation is you usually become more pro-social and community oriented with your money. It's the pathological people who don't. That's what the concern is, actually.
Yeah, I really disagree that when a person has land, money, sex, you become hedonistic and individualistic. I really don't agree with that sentiment.
It's not there in the evidence, right? Most communities don't want to uplift people with money and resources and praise and things like that when they're not actually being pro-social. It's only in the capitalist model that this actually ended up working. Hence why the people who have the most to gain from it are ironically the very people that are the most anti.
There's a trope in all of Western media, whether it's TV, movies, music, about the idiotic and dumb, low IQ religious person. So it's pervading all of entertainment.
Yeah, but now it's changing, right? That's the kind of joke, is that now all of a sudden everyone is going back to church. Everyone is, if not going back to church, at least starting to take religion more seriously, their religious ideas more seriously. So now the question is, okay, they're going to now start looking back and say, well, when I was a kid, why were they saying religious people are so stupid? They've been writing all this genius stuff for so long. In fact, now that I've been forced to read the secular stuff and I read this religious stuff, they're basically saying the same thing. Why was my community lying to me? And once a human starts seeing that they were lied to, you have this natural reaction against this counterfactual model. And then that's where you want to catch people, because when you feel like you've been lied to or
betrayed,
that's the origin of this antisocial sentiment of now destroying the father, right? Or the old system, which is the secular one. And so that's what's about to emerge in the West. So I think this is the actual problem at hand. If you want to look for a real world problem to tackle, how do you capture these people that are quote taking the red pill, but not in the secular Valley Girl kind of way, but in the normal kind of religious, oh, they lied to us about religion, that type of mentality.
I don't even know if I hear what you're saying with like a secular Valley Girl and how you're kind of making that distinction, but I think that it's almost one might be able to compare it to a feeling one might have about an ex-boyfriend who betrayed them, even, right? Except it's this big God figure who betrayed them.
I
and so
think that's what
hold on, and now as we're seeing some individuals either regain or gain faith for the first time in their lives, we have those people who feel like this is a god or a boyfriend who betrayed them, and how dare you start to believe in this thing or have faith in this thing that betrayed me. And I do think that we're starting, like, I don't know, I think that there's
I can see that, yeah, I agree.
yeah,
There's this meta order, what do you call it, affect projection that's going to emerge out of the new atheist and secular atheist agnostic. It's like now they're going to be antisocial to even the people who they otherwise would have been social with, because now they feel even more betrayed. How dare you go back to Christianity? You're stupid, you're irrational, you can't be my friend. You know, the way the new atheists have been actually since. I think that some of the most intolerant people are the new atheists. And they're usually suffering from psychological trauma anyway.
yeah, or some kind of issue with authority.
Yeah, psychological trauma, they call it.
I want to see someone troll this Hinduism is Islam debate that's going on, because I don't know, everybody in this room knows that if we joined that room, majority of what's being spoken is going to be outlandishly incorrect. Incorrect, misconstrued, misrepresented, and arguments that are circular.
Super boring, lots of yelling, and nothing to be gained is my take on those rooms. They've been here since the dawn of Clubhouse.
Chillism is my Clubhouse community service.
I think any debate between Hinduism and Islam should just begin with language, and that's it. That's where everything gets negotiated. They can't substantiate their linguistic theory. We can. They want to weave and create logical arguments without having foundational language covered, and it just becomes loops upon loops and tautologies and impasses. This is better to just limit the whole thing to just language, I think.
It's not, because
I think it just solves
is that you have a system that's organized versus Hinduism, a decentralized system. So you have 10, 20 different people doing their different stuff. That's why you have different holidays celebrated differently in each state, right? It's a system versus a construct.
Yeah, every state celebrates a different holiday.
There's different nuances in how they celebrate that holiday. Different ceremonies, rituals, how they do these rituals. Different mythologies on their gods, their deities. Even some languages, right? The Dravidian whole Sanskrit kind of divide, which is in itself,
No, that was fabricated by the British. That's a British fabrication colonized by the communist socialists to kind of promote the kind of North Indian bureaucrat bourgeois versus the South Indian indigene communist, and think of this communists are the most powerful in the South, and they kind of fermented some of this rhetoric. It's just bad history being used in a politicized way.
So why is there different mythologies for the North and South deities? For example, Kartikeya in the South is married, Kartikeya in the North is a bachelor. Different origin stories for these type of gods, unless there was some type of divide, right? Not linguistic.
No, not necessarily. If you go back to the poetics, they seem to map very nicely. The Dakshina, or the South, is the North and the South versus the East and the West are two poetic tropes, the sun and the moon, that exists, and it works really nicely. The South is geographically the South, but also in terms of coordinate-wise the South, and so the imagery that they're bearing historically fits what we would expect of them. Yo, Dino, I don't know. Did you check out the Pikachu debate room on Clubhouse? I know you were fully in the research and methodology.
Wait, why did you call it Pikachu debate?
I don't know how to say the guy's name. Pikachu.
Oh,
The terrible debate. I stopped watching after 30 minutes. The Pikachu guy was trying to justify pedophilia, and it was just disgusting. And I was just like, I don't want.
I can't do those. Yeah, I can't do those.
No.
out the city, can they got to keep them? They got to move them within the city, or can they go out the
So
city?
there's no legal way to extricate them. Now, here's what has happened, and Nevada's done it to California, California's done it to Nevada, Arizona's done it to California, where social programs will provide them bus tickets to other cities or other states. Reno had a program about 20 years ago where they provided them transit down to Sacramento. And they said, we do not have the resources here. Sacramento has far more resources. If you would like to try to take advantage of those resources, here's your Amtrak train ticket or your Greyhound bus ticket, and here's the address of the resource center in California. And they put a fuck ton of people on buses and they sent them down. Sacramento then responded by doing the exact same thing and shipping them up to fucking Reno. And they had, the state politicians having to work with each other and come to an agreement to stop that movement, because there's nothing that stops you from giving a resource, right? If the city of LA wanted to buy plane tickets to Chicago for every homeless person, there's nothing stopping them from doing it. And you can't stop the homeless. So there's been like bus relocation attempts over the years. And if the homeless are willing to take it, then they will. And there's been some issues over the years where California has gotten a lot of its homeless population from Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, and Utah. Because if you're homeless, being homeless in LA during the winter is a hell of a lot better than being homeless in Utah during the winter. Being homeless in LA on the beach is a hell of a lot better of a summer than being homeless in Las Vegas. And so there's been programs where different municipalities and counties have kind of shoveled their problem off on somebody else. The issue is all of these areas now have such an inundation of homeless, you couldn't do it if you wanted to. Like, it would not be feasible to do a relocation of the homeless, voluntary or otherwise, from any of those places I just mentioned. Like, Vegas has an excessive homeless population. Sacramento has an excessive homeless population. San Francisco, LA, Phoenix, like, every major urban area has a large homeless population, and even suburban neighborhoods have homeless populations now. And so you can't make them leave, which is why they corral them. And it's horrible, but they used to call it the cattle move. And they basically just shovel them around with police pressure and the health and safety regulations so that no one area has them for too long, and it keeps them moving while you try to quote unquote fix the problem. And that's a whole nother discussion about the inefficiency of most of the projects we've tried for homelessness. But this case is very likely to get rid of homelessness. It's just going to have a heavy impact on what types of policies can be passed and how they can be enforced.
What happened to the Housing First initiatives?
Which Housing First initiative?
I believe in the past there were several Housing First initiatives that were issued, and basically it placed people in actual housing, and the duration was probably maybe 6 months, but you had to go to a clean program, get clean, and they helped you with employment and everything. They did everything for you to get you back on your feet, and gave you time to do that. What happened to those?
So those were really, to my knowledge, right, the ones I know about, they were really big in the 90s and the early 2000s. And due to the amount of mentally ill, because we closed all the asylums and sanitariums, and the amount of drug use spiking, what they realized is the amount of people that were using it, getting into a place, falling off the wagon or not taking their meds and landing back into the homeless population, they eventually deemed them to be really expensive and ineffective. So like a lot of the ones in California that were state funded and county run, they got rid of them because they said, hey, these are the same fucking people over and over and over and over and over. And we're not actually solving anything here. We're just wasting money. We don't have the resources to do this for everyone. And so they ran into a place in California where they got sued over some of these policies. The state and LA County, Alameda County, San Francisco County got sued in the late 90s, 97, 98, over the discrimination in these policies. And they said, hey, this race is getting more, this gender is getting more, you're discriminating against LGBTQ, da-da-da-da-da. And after losing a couple of those lawsuits, they said, okay, this is just an expensive, ineffective program, so they scrapped them. Which is what usually happens, is once something becomes too problematic and too expensive without results, they stop doing them. My understanding is when those lawsuits all came out and there were these fat paydays that came out of tax money, they said, okay, well, here's how we're not going to discriminate. We're going to just cut the whole fucking program and no one's going to have anything. And that's usually what states end up doing. And so it's a shitty double-edged sword where it's like, I don't blame people being discriminated against from saying, hey, we're not getting the same access to the same line for resources. But it ended up becoming such an expensive mess in those examples that they said, fuck it, we'll cut the whole program. And we'll go back to the drawing board and see how we can fix it. And anyone who's paid attention to homelessness, like specifically in California, we have wasted billions of dollars at this point on non-functional solutions. The city of LA used $200 million a few years ago on think tanks development, and they ended up using a lot they owned to put what amounted to 20 sheds you could buy at Home Depot on city land. And that's what they got with $200 million of homeless funding. And I'm not laughing because it's funny, I'm laughing because it's painful. If you look at the amount of projects that are mismanaged, consulted into the ground financially, and they basically turn into nothing better than Home Depot sheds on government land for $100 million, $200 million, $300 million. And usually while they're doing those, they put everyone in shitty hotels. California had Project Hotel Key in 2020. They had Project Motel Hotel in 97. And they say, okay, we're going to get all these people off the street right now while we build the solution. Well, then the solution ends up being 20 sheds on government land, and they've got, 700 people in hotels they've been paying for a year and a half. And it just, they waste money. We waste more money on stupidity programs, in my opinion, specifically to California, and other states do it as well, but we have not wisely built resources or revamped resources. So again, just using examples I know, San Diego City is a great example. There are derelict naval bases here, and the Navy has allowed them to take over some of that land. And they had 1,100 single, basically studio units. Now, the buildings were full of asbestos and they had to tear them down, and they had to do that, right? Rather than rebuilding or retrofitting, they tore them down and put tents in the parking lot. And it's like, okay, you own the land. You have the plans from the original barracks. You could build 1,100 studio units on that land without a problem. You'd have the parking, you'd have the gates, you'd have everything. And instead, they tore it all down to the ground and just threw tents on it. That's, in my opinion, half of why we have the problem we do with homelessness.
I do like what you guys are doing in San Diego with the, at least giving them a place to go, like a parking lot or something to go. That should actually be the example that all places should. Why can't we use federal land to give them a spot to go to?
Well, that presumes they have a car. Not every homeless person has a car.
Yeah, no. Like Brem was saying, every situation is different. But it would at least because I don't think the government can fix homelessness. I think Brem's right. We've thrown a lot of ideas out and this and that, but in terms of not at least treating these people humanely and doing something, because the problem's not going to go away if we're just shifting people around. Maybe at least giving them a plot of land to go to if we don't want them in the parks. Seems like a decent idea. It actually seems like the most practical idea, what you guys are doing in San Diego. But they used to have migrant camps back in the day. When people would live in migrant camps and work. That was one thing. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, you actually,
I
worked on the homeless problem in New York many years ago. New York, of course, is unique, New York City. So I'm going to tell you, and this would apply to anywhere, even outside of New York. If
if you separate the mentally ill from the ones that are just homeless because of economics, this is really the most important delineation, okay? At least on the economic ones, government can't do this. Now, California has proven they can't, but that's because, but it's not because it's a technological or scientific possibility or even a financial one. It's because they feather-bed everything. Union contracts, prevailing wage laws, environmental restrictions, all the stuff that, that creates a situation where I think in Santa Monica they just spent $2 million a unit for homeless housing or something. I mean, it's insane. Okay, you look at other countries, because these things exist, by the way. There are these, pods that in other foreign countries. They're self-contained little pods. They're even, probably smaller than the studio or about the size of the studio. You could build them anywhere. They're modular, right? So now, all of a sudden, the unions don't like it because, you build these all in the factory and you put them up on a flatbed and you just place them somewhere, okay? But you can do this affordably, okay? It just depends on your political priorities. It's not that we cannot do this. You can do this. The mentally ill with the drugs, that's a whole different set of issues, okay? But in terms of building affordable housing for people who just have an economic issue, government can do this if it wanted. It doesn't have the political will because of all of the other people with their hands out, including all the nonprofits. So one of the things that happened in California, it's happened everywhere else, not everywhere else, but a lot of places, they give everything to these nonprofits, and they get executive directors with $500,000 salaries, and they soak all the money. I mean, all of that's got to end.
Well, Ken's heard me talk about this before, right? So one of the things that I'm able to do professionally, because we're limited on what other jobs and businesses we can own, I'm able to consult, right? Woo. And Carlos, I see your hand. Mute up. I'm talking. When I'm done, we'll get to you. I see it.
Good.
No worries. I just was letting you know that way you didn't wait because I'm gonna be a little long-winded here, but I definitely see your hand. Oh wow, I just lost that. Blah 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 blah. Go ahead, Carlos. I'll get it back.
I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought I unmuted or muted, but it was unmuted. Apologies. Yeah, I'm with Dream Habitat LLC. It's a for-profit, and we have technology that not only can house the homeless but can also feed them. Our first mission is going to be to feed and house homeless veterans. And the idea is that not only to provide them with housing, but also food and a way to create wealth. And the structures are passive solar designed, so they don't require very much energy, which also means that when you put solar panels on the structures, that they'll actually produce more energy than they consume, which means it could be used to offset the costs of the projects. The structures are very well suited for arid environments, like, for example, Sunnymead, California, Palmdale, where you can buy land very, very cheap because it's desert land. As long as there's a utility lines nearby, you can sell back the electricity to the city. And as long as there's cities nearby, for example, Palmdale and Lancaster, Edwards Air Force Base, and the surrounding communities, now not only can you house the veterans, but you can give them a way of creating wealth for themselves. And I believe the problem with current solutions, besides the problems you've noted, that nonprofits and companies take everything and they're driving around in Lamborghinis, and out of every dollar, 1 penny goes to the veterans. That needs to stop. Dream Habitat LLC is going to be 100% transparent with everything we do, where all the money is going, how it's being spent. But the hardest part of it is actually getting the connections and getting the funding. I recently made some connections with some people that are connected to the VA. There's lots of funds for the veterans. Everybody's claiming that we want to help veterans. I was a homeless veteran in California for about 4 months after I got out of the Air Force. Later on, I became an electrical engineer, and now I'm a patent attorney and an inventor. and I've got a greenhouse in my backyard that's been operational now for 12 years. The pictures you see in my PTR is of the greenhouse and also of the food that I've been growing in the greenhouse. I've been growing channel catfish, mushrooms, and every type of vegetable you can grow. I believe that this is the real solution: is creating housing, providing food first of all for the inhabitants, and then finally letting them sell the organic fish plants and mushrooms and soil in the local markets to create wealth for themselves. Because just giving somebody a house is not enough. They need a job, then they need a car to get to the job, and it just doesn't really solve the problem. Thank you.
So one of the things I really appreciate all of that, and I'm going to circle back to touch on a bunch of points there. But while I'm remembering where I was saying before, I've said this in rooms before, and Ken and Hakima have heard this before. So I've sat on a bunch of think tanks to do with homeless projects and different types of city planning from the legal and constitutional aspect. And I sat on one in 2018 for Los Angeles, and there were 20 attorneys, judges, policymakers, lobbyists on this particular think tank. And we each made $150,000 for 10 hours of time over 4 weekends. The ridiculous amount of money wasted, and I'm going to say wasted, on consultants, on think tanks. Now, I do it because I then take that money and donate it to other actual nonprofits that I know and trust who are doing the work. And that way I can be involved in the think tank process, because just complaining about things doesn't help when you have the opportunity to be, and I'm, as Carlos was saying, getting into the right circles. I'm blessed due to my career. I'm in certain circles. And so I get the opportunity to do those things. But $150,000 for 10 hours of time. And the reason they justify this is because you have judges and high-end corporate attorneys and lobbyists with credentials through the wall and all these things. And on a market level, am I worth that of time? Of course I am. On a reality of, is that useful for that money when you're talking about allocating things for the homeless? God, no. And it doesn't even offend me to say God, no. One, you don't need that many of us. They've been doing think tanks and studies on homelessness and solutions for decades. And that amount of money is insane. And when they were coming up with that particular program, they ended up doing 11 think tanks and consultant groups over a 12-month period of time. So if I'm looking at this and saying, okay, I was in one of them, and you did 11 of them, you wasted probably somewhere around $15 to $20 million on consultants, when those of us who actually are involved with nonprofits and look on the ground, $20 million will get a hell of a lot done if it's given to the right hands and it's not about fucking red tape. But instead, that particular $20 million got used to have very intelligent, very credentialed people give expertise on something that they've been giving expertise on for 25 years. It's wasteful, it's bloated, it's stupid, and that's before you then take a couple $100 million and give it to nonprofits where, as Carlos mentioned and Ken mentioned, the directors are making 6-7-figure salaries driving Lamborghinis, but you're the director of a program of homeless programming. It's not that there isn't money, it's that the access to the money is gatekept in a really inefficient way. Zoning and bureaucracy is really fucking inefficient. And then you run into the not in my backyard reality sometimes. Now, obviously, what Carlos is talking about of going to areas like Palmdale, it's probably going to be a little easier to get away from the not in my backyard folks. But some of the results we've had in cities like LA, and this is why I get very heated about these particular issues, we put hundreds of millions of dollars towards these things. And what you end up with is basically a Home Depot shed on a fucking cement plot with portable bathroom trailers. Now, I angel invested for one of my nephews who has an event business. And that business has 6 trailers that are bathroom trailers. So I know what they cost to have a multiple, like, semi-permanent bathroom trailer set up. Not porta potties, but like there'll be 7 or 8 full bathrooms. You hook them up to a water and a septic. Those trailers cost about $50,000. A really nice one with 6 bathrooms will run you about $100K. And that's to do it like weddings and high-end things. You can wheel one of those in and put a bunch of fucking Home Depot sheds on land for, $7 to $10 million. And that's essentially what they end up doing with $200 million budgets. And that's where it gets frustrating for people. Not to say that you don't have better alternatives like what Carlos was talking about, but as simple as I can go to fucking Home Depot and buy beautiful little garden studio sheds or she sheds that would be fine. You shove solar panels on the top, you insulate the walls, and that person has a nice little cottage house. And you put it on already government-owned land, and ta-da! But instead, we end up with worse projects for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I agree. I like what you're doing over there, Carlos. I mean, and there's some good ideas, and people with good ideas and big hearts that put their money where their mouth is, or at least are out trying to do something. I mean, in a perfect world, I would want us to all to want to do something for the homeless, and even the government too. But I just I've lost hope in people actually rallying around that cause, like as a nation, or even as a state or local municipality, and it lasting. But I was thinking in the terms of like the homeless person and the millions of homeless people that they are. Like right now they want to play. They just like what happened in Boise. Like the guy's just trying to sleep, and he's being harassed because he has nowhere else to go just to sleep. They're just forcing him to stay awake. Like, where can they go? So I'm thinking because some of these laws that these legislators pass are what's the word I'm looking for? They're like abusive towards these people, and that's my main concern. Is I hope that they get this with this Supreme Court case. They at least come out in a way where they're stopping these local municipalities from inflicting harm on the homeless people that are there. Because that's, regardless of all the programs out there, it sounds like that's what's happening,
Well, it's a balancing act, right? And this is the thing, and I come out on both sides of this discussion, right? I want to be able to take my grandkids to the neighborhood park where they live. I don't want a bunch of homeless schizophrenics with samurai swords shitting on the slide. Let me be very clear, right? I'm not in support of that. I also understand that the reason why we have that is because we closed the asylums, we tied police's hands on enforcement, and we don't have alternative places to put these people. So instead, you have areas where that's what you have, right? You have druggies under the bench with a tarp shooting up, and you have schizophrenics swinging samurai swords and shitting on the slides. I get why the public votes and goes, hey, we gotta have rules to get rid of these people. This is horrible. And I don't blame them for that. But on the flip side, when you're looking at policy, you go, okay, why do we have a bunch of schizos out in public? And I know I'm being insensitive with the framing, but I'm just being honest here. That's how most Americans look at it. Why do we have all these fucking crazy people out? Well, because we stopped funding asylums and sanitariums, and we don't have anywhere else for them to go. So, okay, that's a reality we have due to policy. Why do we have all these druggies out here? Okay, anyone who lives in California, for example, knows it is extremely hard to get somebody into a drug rehab program. Extremely hard. If you have good insurance, it's hard. If you don't have insurance, it's extremely hard / impossible to find a place, a rehab facility. We simply don't have enough of them. There's not enough space. And so even if every drug addict wanted and was at the point where they were ready to seek treatment or accept treatment, we don't have the resources. So those two groups alone are due to policy and societic realities. Then we have cost of living, unemployment, layoffs, those types of things, where we don't have enough programs in place, in my opinion, to stop new people from becoming homeless. Like I've said for a long time, I wish California would put more money into, and I forget what the program is currently called, but in the 90s, it was from couch to bedroom was the concept. And basically, it was for people that were couch surfing or living, with a family member, or, they lost their apartment, they were getting close to losing their apartment. And if you were getting ready to be evicted, there were emergency funds and resources to get you to where you were no longer facing eviction. If you had already been evicted, there were funds to help get you back on your feet or pay for your current room or where you're at. And over the years, we've done away with putting money into those, and instead we're putting money into the programs to get the homeless off the streets. And to me, if you were doing it effectively, that would make sense. But it's been one or the other for decades in states like California and Florida. And the thing is, we really should be both anding, because if the boat is already sinking and has holes, you don't need to put more people on the boat. And it's a lot cheaper for anyone who's ever been involved in these nonprofits or it's a lot cheaper to keep somebody in the housing they already have by helping them than it is to get somebody out of a cardboard box. It's a hell of a lot easier if somebody's facing eviction and they're 3 months behind to give them the money and the resources to clear up that 3 month behind and try to have time to get back on track than it is to let them get evicted and get them couch surfing, and then they go from couch surfing to in their car, and then they go from the car to the couch. To the box. And we've known this for decades, and we look at this, and unfortunately the way we fund is stupid. This court case is not likely going to adjust funding, but if it comes down on the side that I think it will, of enforcement of policies is going to be dependent on resources, that alone could be massively beneficial, because it will nudge states and counties to watch what resources they're putting out and make sure they're available in a way that makes sense so they can enforce their laws still. And that would be the win to me on this one.
Yeah, some of the best run facilities are like facilities like Carlos own, but they get funding from the state. One of them that comes to mind, I've been in recovery for 6 years, and I've even recommended this place to people, and it's easy to get people. It's not difficult to get people. It's called Beit Shuva, and I think it's either in Santa Monica or it's in Los Angeles. It's somewhere around there, but the state pays for like 90 days, and it's not difficult to get people in there, like for addiction and stuff. But one other thing I want to comment on is addiction's a totally different issue. If somebody has the willingness, there are tons of celebrities that will help you, but not with their money, but with how to get where you need to go. But they're not going to talk about it because a lot of that stuff they do anonymously and altruistically. They don't want their name out there. That would ruin ruin the whole deal.
So, Michael, let me tell you this, right? Just from a level of somebody who was a federal prosecutor for years and is in the system, right? We don't have enough drug rehab facilities, even for the court-mandated cases. So if you talk about California as a state, the state courts, not federal, state courts, mandate more people to rehab care every year than there are facilities. So if we only talk about the court-mandated cases, the facilities would be full. Think about the amount of people with drug addiction problems who are going because families put them there, friends put them there, they hit rock bottom, right? Those people would have not one seat available if all of the court-required mandated people were put in. So there's no statistic in the world or claim in the world for California that if you want care, there's a space available. There's not. And I know there's not because I sit on a federal bench where we look to place people, and all of these places are inundated. And I've had my clerk call, and I've had our staff call and pull strings to get people put in so I can accept plea bargains on behalf of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Right? So when the federal government is having to call in favors and pull strings to get somebody into rehab, I don't buy the concept that you as Joe Schmo nobody can just walk your family member to a rehab if they wanted it. Because I, as somebody with a lot of clout and influence, have to pull strings to find a space for people. So it really is not that readily available at all, I can tell you, especially in California, maybe in a different state. But LA County has an estimated 61,000 people right now on wait lists for rehab. Wait lists. These are not people in rehab. These are people sitting on wait lists to go to rehab in LA County.
Brent,
So out of a county of 13 million, we have over 60,000 people on rehab wait lists.
Brent, you have Edmund in the room under hypnosis down there. The one the broadcast room's onto Instagram.
Yeah, I know who Edmund is. Roger's made it very clear he's not welcome. What's the profile?
Hypnosis.
Sorry, Edmund. Not my call. Talk to Roger about it.
I can't believe this shit. Oh, God, it's so funny. Oh, fucking the glory. The glory. Oh, my God, beautiful.
Which is what revolutionizes the future, but we need to realize a lot of people who are even going to these protests, and there's certain slogans that have been said, like Intifada and River to the Sea, and people say, oh, that's attached to trying to get rid of Israel. There's all that stuff, to be honest with you. And then they say that, oh, they're violent, they want to get rid. And people don't understand that there's groupthink. If you go to a sports game and they're chanting something, the group starts chanting it. Even when people are at these protests, some people just show up because it's what they think is the right thing to do, or it's the popular thing to do. So a lot of the times people that do join these protests are not doing it because they know much about it or genuinely care. It's just some people, want to be anti whatever, always want to be rebel. So there are a group of those people there as well. So I wouldn't say that everyone that's there is genuinely caring about what's happening. Some people just want to be radical in some type of sense and be against the system, be against the man, but not really know what's going on. So there's a big group of those people.
Well said. I'm kind of also curious, though. You mentioned, some words.
Fucking piece of trash.
Is that
Barf. Hey, Barf. How you doing, Barf?
Barf, you're in the Matrix.
Barf. Hey, Barf.